Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Today, we've got two engineers on this broadcast, Jason and Nathan. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And we broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. If you'd like to give us a call, we'll pay for it. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. 605-477-3249 is the listen line. Listen line is 605-477-3249. Rich Scheben is live with us in Montana. Welcome, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Mr. Finelli. How are you doing this morning?
Very well. You know, we got an email from one of our class members, and I'd like to read it to you. Very interesting question. And it says, I listen to a majority of your broadcasts via the Ron Gibson YouTube channel. During this broadcast, you described, and he's talking about yesterday's broadcast with Dr. Norman Shealy, and I went on a rant about behavior of people that I despise. And it said, during this broadcast, you described many of the faults of individuals, and I was wondering, what is your approach for loved ones regarding the social condition of this country's social confusion, especially the young adults in your life? Let me say that again. Especially the young adults in your life. Now, I take that to mean not necessarily family members, but, people whom I encounter, people who I try to teach and share information with, and people I try to educate. It goes on to say, this is an important matter for the future. There are young adults that have received a much different understanding of life and have been taught skills that are much different than a majority of the United States citizenry. How will these individuals with little life experience survive the opposing view of that which you describe in this broadcast? That was sent to me by Jimmy Mering, and he's in Virginia. So I'd like to respond to that, and I'd love to hear your response as well, Rich. Mm-hmm. So here are my thoughts. Recently, I was helping a young person, female, in her 20s, with a car. And she was interested in a car, one that was safe, so our entire family was involved in this. Mrs. Finelli, our two boys, and I. And we found a vehicle for her. It happened to be a Mercedes. And it was very, very reasonably priced. It was around a 1999 model E320, one that we have here at the farm. And we've been all over these cars, so we know what to look for. We know that they're safe. If you know how to fix them and if you work on them, they're affordable. They're very affordable. And they're sturdy, and they're good vehicles in terms of automobile warfare. I mean, if you have to get hit in a car, you're probably better off in a Mercedes than, a Toyota. or a Kia car. Well, so we spent over a day and a half helping her, explaining to her and the pros and cons, and that I told her that I would teach her how to service it, and if she ended up buying one, we were going to take her to visit the vehicle yesterday, and I told her that we'd put on the lift and she'd be under it, and I would teach her some things, and so would the boys. And she was all for it. Then it didn't work out because the person that was selling it just stopped answering his phone. It was very unusual. So I was talking with her last night about this vehicle, and she said, she really wanted a newer vehicle. It blew me away. After spending, a day and a half teaching her why new vehicles are difficult to live with, why you can't service them, why, they've got 7 computers or more, maybe 20 computers that all talk to each other, and even the mechanics can't figure out how to service a new vehicle. They get stumped. Then I talked to her about wireless and how you can have these, push-button remote starts, and she thought that was really cool, having a push-button remote start. Why? Because it's, it's fun. And I was starting to get annoyed. And I was thinking about, WWJD. What would Joey do? and it just came out, I didn't say, what would Joey do? But I was thinking, what would Joey do? And I said, you know what? If you have the money, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to buy that new car. And I was thinking, what is she thinking? I've spent all this time trying to help her, and yet on a dime she changes her mind and wants to buy a new vehicle with, all these computer features, remote start, all this stuff that you can't fix. Vehicle-to-vehicle communications, all that stuff, lightweight, plastic, a vehicle that won't survive well in a crash, one that there's no reason to even open the hood on one if it stops on you, because there's nothing you can do to fix it. And so she turned on a dime, and I thought, I can't believe it. I wasted all this time on this young person, trying to help her. Spent time on the phone with the guy who was selling it, researching it, and it annoyed me. It frosted me. It angered me. And right then and there, I decided to write off this project. I decided to not help this person anymore because she flipped on the stupid switch. She became illogical. Turned on a dime. And I'm sorry to say this, but I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. And it's not like I didn't show her a bunch of these Mercedes. We have a whole bunch of them here at the house, ones that we're working on. Our son has a small business, and he works on a lot of these things. And we showed her a bunch of them. Different colors, different seats, different interiors. Same engine, the exact model, everything was, she looked at a whole bunch of them right here, and she thought it was great. And then all of a sudden she changed her mind. I can understand her changing her mind, but I can't understand her wasting my time. Now, if she said, you know what, I don't think I like these, but, I'll look at them. That's not what she said. She wanted us to go and get it. We were going to go get it, except the guy that was selling it stopped answering his phone. So we wrote him off too. Another young person. So to answer your question, Jimmy Mary in Virginia, I think young people have an inability to pay attention. And last night when I was talking to her, just before I lost my temper, and she probably doesn't even know I lost my temper, because I put a big smile on my face like Mike Ma would and said, you deserve, if you can afford it, you deserve to be happy. You deserve that push-button car with the remote start, the one that's easily stolen. You deserve it. She was distracted. I'm talking to her, teaching her, just the two of us. And she turns to the computer, and she's, typing on the kitchen computer. And I looked at her like, what's wrong with you? I'm talking with you. I'm teaching you. And you're not paying attention. And she looked at me and she said, I can do, several things at one time. And I really wanted to say, okay, that's fine, but I'm not going to. So I stopped it right there. That's where the class ended. Right there. So to answer your question, Jimmy Mering in Virginia, I don't have the patience I used to have with people who don't pay attention, who don't listen. I don't have the patience. Now, if they want to learn, I'm all for helping them. But enough's enough. Rich Scheben, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I can go on and on and on. But bear with me, stick with me here. I'm just going to mention two articles. And you're going to think that it has nothing to do with it, but it does. Mainstream media spread fake news about the mega narrative American incident. New evidence is showing up proving the exact opposite of the media's narrative. Next article, Twitter allows verified calls for violence against conservative high school kids. What people are doing, and there's a reason why I talk about economy 101, because debt does not mean happiness. GDP does not mean happiness. This is why I always make the association where you need between three, depending on who you read, between $3 and $6 of increased debt for $1 of GDP. Now, I talk how many days have I talked, weeks have I talked about the recession coming? When you buy something that's higher in value, you're going to get a margin call, and you're going to have to sell that collateral for pennies on the dollar. And this is why I always say beware the experts, the official authorities, and your peers. We need to bring back that mentor-protege relationship where the older people can give information to the young people. We live in a surveillance censorship state against the little people, and all the messages are sanctioned from the top down. Vince, I'd like to finish my thought after the break, please.
Sure. Rich Scheben's with us. OffGridMontana.com. Rich Scheben's with us. OffGridMontana.com. Rich, please continue your thoughts on young people and what I mentioned during the opening of this broadcast.
Yeah, well, they're not getting good information. It's a lack of information. It's propaganda. Again, like I mentioned earlier before the break, everything is sanctioned from the top down to create chaos and infighting. We have to, everything from the mainstream media and the people, not just the CNNs and the MSNBCs and the ABCs and the NBCs and CBSs, but the BuzzFeed feed, all of the media is owned by the richest people in the world. Okay? So they manufacture perceptions. So the youth today are getting lies, propaganda, false flags, and the ideas and solutions and the options are dwindling for the young people. We have to make our own outside-the-box ideas and solutions. So the silent majority must speak up and remember that being an American today is not a spectator sport. We have to help people with information. We have to get them curious enough to read up, research up, and speak up. The young people what they're doing is they're giving up. I'm seeing people take a 2-week cruise, and they pay for it for 2 years. So this now era satisfaction is destroying them, and that's why drug use is up, suicide is up, obesity is up, all the unit measure of despair is up. So when you give up because of lack of information, the fathers are being kicked out of the home. Group identity politics has basically eliminated incentive and value for work. This is what you get. And this is why I give ideas and solutions like practice what you preach laws, like having schools for self-sufficiency, which would include quite a few different areas. But the powers that be don't want that. They want to keep the youth dumbed down, because if they can distract them with bread and circus and they can keep them dumb from, like the examples I gave from the University of Illinois, the teacher saying objective facts is white supremacy and racist. I mean, we're entering the era of stupid. So we're teaching kids and paying professors, and they're teaching kids stupid to be stupid, to dumb them down, so they can't. So the serfs never know how to deal with the aristocracy. And this is what's happening. And they see all this, and they're overwhelmed, and they're giving up. So my advice to those people, especially in your family, is to use objective facts in your arguments. And especially, you got to keep hounding people. You got to show that, hey, if you're out of debt early in life and you practice what you preach, and you're having a pretty good life where you have more time, you get to hunt and fish, or whatever floats your boat, and you're enjoying your quality of life with your goals and your dreams, and they see that they're paying off debts and a hamster on a treadmill runs to nowhere. That's the best way to show them what they need to do. Vince?
Okay. Too many young people don't seem to know very much about things that matter. They can't live without that darn smartphone. They're ignorant of so many skills, and they lack practical knowledge. They don't even know how little they know, and they don't seem to have the desire to learn more. Now, I'm not talking about all young people, but I'm talking about way too many of them. And they flit from thing to thing to thing to thing. Their attention span is that of a gnat. It's amazing to me that they don't really have any interest in reading books. Have you noticed, class, that you hardly ever see a young person reading a book? Especially a book about practical things like science and math and learning history. And they seem to have a foggy view of things. Like they may be able to mention the term, but they're off like, 90 degrees from what it means. Think about that. Young people have heard of some of the terms that we use here on the air, but they really don't know what they mean, and they can't describe it. So, class, I asked myself, what would Joey do? And in that situation, I know what Joey would do. He would lose his temper quietly, and he would say, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. I've wasted enough time. You know everything. I'm talking about the young people. You know everything. I don't need to, to teach you because you already know it. So have a nice time. Enjoy that new car. Enjoy those computers and all those gadgets that you really, make you happy. Enjoy that. And I think that's what he would do. And I feel the same way. I'm tired of wasting my time with people who just are ignorant of the facts. And class, so here's my challenge. If you think that what we've said is correct, give us a call right now and let us know if you think we're correct. If you think we're incorrect and you need to set us straight, give us a call right now and tell us where we are mistaken. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. And I would especially like to hear from our detractor. Yeah, the person who thinks we're wrong about everything. I'd love to hear that. And I challenge those who are in agreement and those who are not in agreement to give us a call. We'll pay for the call. All you have to do is make a cogent, logical argument, and we'll let it be heard worldwide. 866-582-9933. Rich Scheben?
Yeah, well, what if I said that if you buy an app and put it on your phone, it won't build skill sets. It's going to force you to throw out the old ways of thinking, where we should never do that. We should incorporate the old skills with the new skills. Keep the 19th century skills, redevelop them, but dovetail them with 21st century skills. What if I told you that the loss of the middle class would eliminate buyers, not just for the bottom 93%, but for retirees and whatever's left of the middle class? What if I told you that robotics, automation, artificial intelligence was going to take a good portion of the job, millions of jobs, where it would leave most people destitute and on the street? What if I told you that we are in a stagflationary, deflationary environment, but yet the powers that be are going to do everything to stick to Keynesian economics, which is, when in doubt, inflate the currency, which means it has less value? It's pretty obvious that anybody who reads can see that the powers that be are eliminating the middle class. And when you look at just math alone, and pardon the University of Illinois, because math apparently is racist. It's white supremacy. It's objective facts. We have gone full speed ahead, stupid. And you kids are paying for it by going to school. I bet you're excited. So this is why I think a lot of kids are giving up, Vince. You know, when you look at math, 40% of America is funded by other countries, especially China. Well, what happens when they leave the dollar, sell the treasuries? There's no more petrodollar/world reserve currency, and all of it comes flooding back. And we go from a deflationary, stagflationary environment to a hyperinflationary environment. I'm not saying it's absolutely going to happen because I don't have a crystal ball. But when you look at it from a math perspective, it definitely can. So it's pretty obvious the powers that be want to control the people, and they represent lies, propaganda, false flags. In other words, it's a coup against we, the people, to govern ourselves. So when you see this consolidation of addiction of power, money going to the elite, the inequality widening between the haves and the have-nots, and you see irrational, desperate behavior and language coming from the mainstream media and the powers that be, which doesn't even make sense anymore, it's pretty obvious that the young kids are putting their eggs in the wrong baskets. And this is why, when we first started talking about this, Vince, years ago, we were so adamant about the fact that, you know, this information, especially since we're willing to help people and get people in a database with different skill sets, different capital resources, teach them how to buy land, what type of land to buy, how to take that land and develop it and cross-train one another, live off-grid, garden, be self-sufficient. It's amazing that more and more people are moving to urban, suburban America. But I think there is a little bit of people waking up from the high-tax states, the Californias, the Illinois, the Northeast, and there's a mass exodus out of these states because they don't want to be in debt. They know that the young generations can't buy their equity because of taxes and insurance being so high. It's a cost-shifting disaster. So everybody's trying to leave those states in a hurry so they can have some money to retire with or whatever they're going to do. But I really urge people, Vince, to start thinking about being prepared in the context of gaining those skill sets back. Gardening, raising animals, hunting and fishing, edible medicinal plants, rural property, creating a balance in life between nature and technology, between even humor and being serious. I mean, we've gotten to the point where, the biggest excuse phrase in America is, I'm offended. This is absolutely made to break people's will and to make the younger generation submissive. It's meant to have you give up. So I really urge people to start thinking outside the cookie-cutter follower politically correct subdivision, urban, suburban mentality, and start thinking about adventure. Start thinking about freedom, liberty, curiosity, skill sets, getting more healthy with non-GMO foods, without hormones, steroids, and antibiotics, looking into alternative energy. We are allowing the elite to poison us against ourselves with things like group identity politics, which has lowered the bars of standards and expectations for getting a job and keeping a job, so there's no value in work anymore. So what can we do?
Here's what we can do. We have stupid teachers. Stupid teachers who want more money. We have these stupid teachers are confined and confused by federal regulations that have made our children stupid. Our children are unable to solve problems. Here's the challenge. Class, if you have a child in the public training camp, here's what you do. You tell your child that you're going to school with them tomorrow. Tomorrow. You're going to be going to school with your child, and you dress appropriately. And you show up at the school the same time your child does. Or you take your child to school in the morning. And you go into the office, and you tell the secretary at the office, you are here to sit in on classes and lunch and recess and gym, the whole everything with your child. Now, the secretary might be a little bit aghast at that. And you say, no, I'm here to do this today. I'm not making an appointment. I'm here right now. And this is what I'm going to be doing. They're going to have to let you because you're paying for this. You're paying about $10,000 in taxes per child per year for this daycare that your child is getting. And so you sit in on these classes, and then you will learn firsthand how stupid these teachers are, how ridiculous these class sizes are, how your child is unable to learn, and they're preventing your child from learning. And you'll be stunned. And then you're going to want to revolt. And then you're going to want to get together with your neighbors and you're going to say, look, we have to throw these people out of our school district. We have to fire the principal, the superintendent, and most of the teachers. And you're going to have meetings in your houses. And you're going to say, we're going to run for a school board office. And that's how we're going to do it. We are going to take over the school. We're going to take over the education because we are wasting our most important resource, our children. They're becoming dumber by the second. Now, would I ask you to do anything that I haven't done? Absolutely not. Have I done everything that I said? Absolutely. I've done this. I've challenged the teachers. I've sat through the whole day of school with Mrs. Finelli in the classrooms, and we've watched the pathetic public training camp. And I ran for the school board. And I told the superintendent, if I win, you're fired. You're fired. You know what she did? She panicked. She got all the teachers and everybody and all the blue bloods together so that they could defeat me, and they did. The generally dumb public in our school district re-elected a convicted felon. No kidding. A convicted felon. What was his felony? Drugs. That's a good mix. Children and drugs. I put an ad in the paper. My campaign was really simple. Fire the entire school district board of directors. Consider electing Vincent Finelli, the only candidate who won't make your child urinate in a cup. I was on the side of the students. against the big bad educational machine. So the federal regulations, the federal money that the school gets, get rid of it. I met with the teachers after school. I said, what are you guys doing? We're, charts and graphs and reports and statistics. For who? For the federal government. I said, don't do it. Well, we have to. Why? Because they say so. Why? Why don't you get back to education? Teaching the children. Forget these charts and graphs and databases and reports. Forget it. We don't need their money. Let's start educating our children. Take back our school systems and throw out the top management, starting with the superintendent and principals. Kyle in Montana is joining us. Welcome, Kyle.
Good morning, gentlemen. I got three quick... Good morning, Rich. I got 3 quick points I'll make before the top of the hour break here real quick. I've come up with a new phrase for a lot of these young people and even most of the politicians anymore. They have no core attachment to reality. They just don't have it. And the further we get, like my dad used to say, the further we get from an agrarian type society, the further we get from any attachment to common sense, reality, anything. It's just a one step at a time, and they planned it very well. And these public training camps are just like you said. They're training kids to become idealistic fools, and that's exactly where it ends up. The second thing that I was going to bring up is, like Rich was saying, with all these robotics coming in, what do you think people that are kids in particular that are just idle are going to do? They're going to commit crime. And I would highly suggest that people read survival blog post this morning on the prison system. Part 1 is on there this morning, and it is excellent. It just is really so mind-blowing. And the other nose under the tent that we've all got to be aware of right now is this red flag state, red flag situation that's coming down the pike, where they can literally come in, take your guns, your property, and everything on a whim and with no warrant and no proof of anything. Somebody could just call one of your neighbors, get mad at you, and call somebody in a red flag state, and you could have the SWAT team show up. So I'm seriously, we really need to watch these things really carefully and defeat this quick. The gun owners of America and all those guys, they've got to start filing lawsuits like crazy that these things are unconstitutional as they can be. Otherwise, it's just the nose under the tent kind of thing where we will end up with a policed state where they can come in and do what they want anytime they want. Vince, I'll let you go with that. Or Rich, either one.
Well, Kyle, I really appreciate what you said, and I know you're passionate about it. So are you in agreement with us about the young people not knowing as much as they need to know, that the schools have failed them, that we need to take back our schools, we need to run for the school board, we need to fire those who have been mismanaging our $10,000 per year per student? Are you in agreement with that, or do you think there's a better... Okay.
I can't think of anything better, Vince. The hardest thing we're going to wind up doing here, and the thing we're going to all run into, is they have so bloated these school budgets with pension funds and high-priced teachers and tenure and all of these things. Because I was chairman of the school board on a little school that we were out for years. I was there 10 years, I think. I was the chairman on that school board. But in any case, the federal, like I said, the school budgets are so bloated, and everybody thinks that they can't do without certain things. They just can't make it. And so the federal government supplies tons and tons and tons of money. So they have basically control because they have mandated rules, regulations, edicts, whatever you want to call them. They've mandated them. and they make it so that the people can't afford it in order to reach these mandates. So they come in with their funding. If you do what we tell you to do, we'll pay for all of this. And it's a never-ending cycle that, in order to take this back, I'm afraid, gentlemen, in my opinion, we've lost it until there is another revolution. I hate to say it, but it's almost inevitable at this point.
Kyle, I have no disagreement. I thought that maybe we could reverse this with logic and reason. No, there are too many stupid people who have their hands out. Kyle, would you like to stay through the break and continue with us?
Actually, Vince, I'd love to, but I've got to head out. So I'll catch you at a later date.
Kyle, I've been thinking about you and your wife. Thank you so much for all that you do for us here at USA Prepares. Hour number 2 of the USA Prepares. So we just heard top of the hour news. Light Lowford Barry allowed the transgender confused to infiltrate the U.S. military. President Donald Trump stopped that confusion from destroying the U.S. military. Well done. Great job. Congratulations, President Donald Trump. Keep up the great work. Build the wall and stop the invasion. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Rich, I think it's time that we talk about what it might be like with a grid down situation. And I don't know anybody better to talk about what it'd be like with a grid down situation than Rich Sheben, because you are absolutely, totally not dependent on the grid at your cabin, at your ranch in Montana, except that you do depend on the supply chain for some of your supplies, like your gasoline engines and generator and oil and gasoline and fuel and those kinds of things that, pretty much everybody is. But if the grid went down, you'd be okay for a while. Can you tell us what life is like in your cabin? So, for example, you heat with wood, you cook with wood, and if you want to take a bath, you have to think about it a couple hours before bath time, or there's going to be a cold water bath. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I'll comment on all that. I just want to comment on the teacher thing and what you just said right after the break, if that's okay, Vince, so I can get my 2 cents in. I was going to comment on the teacher thing before Kyle came in, but I just want to talk about...
Go ahead. Comment on all of it.
Yeah, they say the teacher, all this money is for the kids. It's a bunch of crap. Basically, we're paying teachers for destructive followers and theory and not practical experience and not thinking on their own. Basically, this teacher pay striking thing is they're saying, well, we need less kids in class. It's so they can hire more teachers. It's so the unions can get more strength and more numbers and more dues. And the taxpayers are paying for the social indoctrination so 6-year-old boys can learn how to give BJs in public school and change their sexual identity. And as we live in this emperor has no clothes society, that's what you really, that's what I was waiting to say when I had an opportunity. And as far as the transgender thing, South Dakota right now is considering a bill banning transgenders from competing against opposite biological sex. Folks, every group has subsets, and every subset has subsets, and so on and so forth. It's basically everything is made to distract, dumb down, and divide us by groups. Everything is made to have us look at what skin pigmentation shade, gender, sexual orientation, religion, ideology, everything. It's made to basically, this infighting and chaos is supposed to keep us off kilt. Their job is to sway public opinion, manufacture perception, pity, guilt, and hold on to the narratives. It has nothing to do with what's best for the public. It has everything to do that represents the lies, the propaganda, the control of the people in order for the elite to have control of the masses. This is basically what it is. So we have to keep this in mind, that when you lower the bars, the standards not, and expectations for whether it be competing in sports or getting a job or keeping a job or being a teacher, all that's out the window right now. So we no longer use hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications and criteria of that sort to get ahead. So we have to keep all this in mind, that all this propaganda is created to divide us and make us submissive and break our will. And as we talked about in the first hour, it's doing a very good job for the two younger generations. Now, Vince, regarding your question, yes, I live with a wood-cook stove. I talk so much about economy and political correctness. I talk about social and political issues. And I really enjoy talking about Economic 101 because connecting the dots really shows what the elite has in store for us. But what I try and do, because we live in an era where we can no longer control our own destiny because everything is based on what group we're in. In fact, here's two articles right here. British police take heat over woman and minority recruitment ad. And next article is exclusive Green Beret targeted after anonymous email exposed lower standards for special forces who are less capable than ever before, mostly targeted towards female. See, again, how can the little guy control his own destiny if he can't separate him or herself from the pack with doing what needs to be done to make you a better employer or an employee, when opportunities have been eliminated because of the lowering the bars of expectations, rewarding mediocrity, and creating a law of diminishing returns, opportunity, ingenuity, productivity, and innovation and knowledge is being squelched for the bottom 93% at least. So we have to think outside the box. So what I do is I live off-grid. For those of you who are new listeners, we haven't talked about this maybe in at least a year or two. And I live with an Amish-made wood-cook stove with a 20-gallon hot water reservoir. I have no interior pipes. I have no hot water heater. So, like Vince said, if we want to take a bath, we have to think about it. We have to make sure, with the wood stove on, basically 9-10 months out of the year, we always have hot water in the reservoir, which is attached with a water jacket and copper pipes to the wood stove itself. And if I want to take a shower, I use a solar shower bag, and in about 5 minutes I can put in some type of lukewarm water that is very comfortable when I take a shower. So it's a different way of doing things. We hunt and fish for our meat. We try to keep the GMOs off the table as much as possible. We try to be as organic as possible. I have a big garden here with at least 10 raised beds that I grow my own produce. And just like the meat and the produce, I probably give away 50% of what I kill or harvest and give it to people who appreciate it. So what I'm trying to do is create ideas and solutions that makes people regain that balance and lost 19th century skill sets, but dovetail them with technology. And as we live in an era where the average American spends 7 to 8 hours a day on TV and their smartphone, they're putting too much time into technology, which is basically surveillance and censorship from the elites. Remember, as I've said many times, we are the product. Okay, the advertisers are the consumer. So how do we learn these skills? Because schools are, again, teaching theory and not practical experience, especially as we enter an era where robotics, automation, artificial intelligence is going to be taking millions of jobs. Well, this is why we have to think outside the box and be around like-minded people. We need to talk. When you listen to shows like this, if you have family members or friends and you say, hey, this is a really good idea, let's move to the country. Let's live off-grid. And I have a very small system, and we should go back to talking about this again, Vince. I have a 675 amp-hour system, which is very small. I have about 1,400 watts of panels. And here in western Montana, it's pretty dark in the wintertime because of clouds. never mind the short days. So we use a generator as a backup, which is an AC tool, and that pumps voltage and amps into our batteries and stores them as DC after it goes to the inverter charger. So it's a totally different lifestyle. I absolutely, one of the most fun things I've ever had, folks, in my life. And I was born and raised in the metropolitan area of New York City. I grew up from the age of 15 living in the discos and nightclubs. I was in corporate America between there and Montana for at least 20 years. Had to wear a suit and tie and drive a company car. And I absolutely, one of the best things in my life was pioneering and homesteading raw land. And I was able to build my cabin my way, the way I wanted to do it for my lifestyle. And I kept it in a situation where as I get older, because I'm pushing 60 years old, that I can adapt to my situation. You know, for example, this year, I don't know if I told you this, Vince, we put thermal curtains through the middle of the cabin. Now, we can still access the whole cabin, but we're concentrating on heating half of the cabin right now. And with this new wood cook stove that I have, and doing this, well, plus we're having one of the most mild winters we've ever had in my 32 years in Montana, okay? We are concentrating on adapting to circumstances as we get older so we can have more options. We don't have to put as much elbow grease into harvesting as many cords. I use a wood splitter. I can't use a maul. When I do a maul, it's very infrequent just to chop up my splits into smaller pieces of kindling. So everything I do is outside the box compared to the majority of Americans, because when you look at the statistics, especially in the lower 48, I could definitely say that probably less than 0.5% of us live off-grid. And I've had the privilege of visiting a lot of off-grid homes. And everybody does it different, based on their capital resources, based on their skill sets, based on how they want to live. I use gravity feed water that I fill up 2 tanks with a garden hose approximately once a month. Takes about an hour. How many people do you know live that way? So we're very conservative on water, very conservative on everything. We have a compost pile, we have guard dogs, we have goats, we have chickens. We don't have one morsel of food that goes to waste, Vince.
Let's talk more about that when we come back. And I'd like to talk to you about what happens on cloudy days with your solar system. Rich Scheben, Off-Grid, Montana, the best guy to talk about this. Rich Scheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. He really lives off-grid. So, Rich, right now I'm looking out the window of a studio in Missouri. It's overcast. We probably aren't generating much electricity with our solar array. And we've had day after day after day after day of cloudy, overcast weather. And during those days, we don't make much electricity at all. As a matter of fact, there's not enough electricity to do the things that we need to do here at the farm. So we run a deficit or a shortfall. What do you do on those days, like in the winter when the sun is low in the sky and there just flat out isn't as much sunshine as during the summer months? What do you do?
Well, yesterday was one of the most beautiful sunny days we had all winter. So it was when you use lead-acid batteries, lead-acid deep cycle batteries like I do, I have T105s. And, there's certain maintenance things you have to do, like putting in distilled water / electrolytes. You have to monitor things. You have to check things. And it's not hard at all. But yesterday, we water the cabin. So that was that once-a-month thing that I told you that we do with a garden hose into our gravity feeds, which is in the cabin. So if we ever left for a week, we never would do that because we have so many animals here. So whenever we leave, even for a day, I get a house sitter, and you just have to. You can't leave these wonderful animals by themselves. They need assistance. They need to be fed. You know, they need gates to be open and closed and that type of stuff. So what I did yesterday was every 7 to 8 days is when I usually fill up my batteries, and I use quotes when I say that, because when you have a deep cycle lead acid batteries, you're supposed to fill up your batteries every 7 to 8 days. Now, yesterday was day 5, but we had so much sun, and I was watering the cabin. I had the generator on anyway, because that's why I push up my water, because that gives me my 240 volts for my 1 horsepower pump. I decided to fill up the batteries, and it wasn't hard at all because we had so much sun. Sometimes I was getting up to 35, 40 amps between the generator and the sun. And then we still had so much sun, so I decided to equalize my batteries, which is something you do about every month and a half, 2 months when you have deep cycle lead acid batteries. In layperson terms, that means you're cooking the batteries, and you should do that every so often just to keep the battery strong and your shelf life long. Now, keep in mind, folks, technology is a double-edged sword. So when I'm home, well, let me back up and address that a little bit. For those of you who have smart meters, smart fridges, smart anything, the word smart can be interchanged with the word spy. Spy, S-P-Y. So, not to mention the fact that there's certain considerations you have to think of that are harmful, like certain RF waves coming out of smart meters. In those California fires, you could see those subdivision neighborhoods who did not get a tree burnt, but yet their houses went up in smoke, and a lot of people are contributing that to smart meters. So there's certain things that you have to consider, because technology, again, makes you, the people, the product for surveillance and censorship, and it doesn't give you any benefits, and you're paying for all this stuff as well. So it's not hard when you have a 675 amp-hour system, Vince, to fill up your batteries once every 7 to 8 days. It's not hard at all. In fact, usually by the second week of February, I'm done using my generator until like beginning of November, because I have so much sun, especially here in the northern hemisphere in Montana. We have so much sun during the summer months that it's not hard. Now, I have purposely a small system, and I use this as an analogy. When you have a 675 amp-hour system, granted you have to live a little more rugged, which I choose to do, but when you fill up that system every 7 to 8 days, it's a lot easier to fill up a coffee cup than it is a 5-gallon bucket, and that's my analogy. So I know a lot of people who went off-grid and they bought these huge battery storage devices with many different types of batteries, because there's different choices like silicon salt out there, there's lithium-ion, there's just a lot of different choices. And they get to that 4-month period in the winter, and they got to run the generator like 12 hours a day or something ridiculous, because they didn't think of the filling up part. Now, with lead-acid batteries, you have to do a little...
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Rich Sheben's with us, and Rich, you used a couple terms. Talked about equalizing your batteries and cooking them. Now, when you said cooking them, you don't mean heating them up, with heat to increase their temperature. I believe what you're talking about is equalizing by increasing the voltage and the amperage to overcharge them for a short time, so that they all end up, each one of the batteries in the battery bank would be about the same condition and same voltage. Is that right?
That's exactly right, Vince. I was trying to use layperson terminology because with the little bit amount of time we should do, I know we've done shows just on this. Maybe we should do that one of these days again. But what Vince means, folks, is that I have charge set points. As your generator or the solar comes in and I'm equalizing my batteries, the amperage that goes into my system decreases and my voltage increases. So my charge set point on my voltage is 29.6. My charge set points on my amperage is 13 amps. So as the volts go up and as get 29.6, and then I get the amps of 13. And it usually, sometimes if it's a cloudy day, I will get the amps to get to the charge set point before the voltage does. And when I do that, that's when, and actually when I equalize, I will go to 31 volts for like 2 hours. Now, folks, I'm going to give you a phone number right here. For those of you who are interested, there's a company out of Idaho, Sandpoint, Idaho, called Backwoods Solar. They are excellent. I haven't called them in a while, but my first 5 years at least of being off-grid, I talked to them a lot. I bought most of my stuff from them. They're great consultants. But check out their website, Backwoods Solar. They're out of Sandpoint, Idaho, and their personal number is 208-263-4290. 208-263-4290. And they will be very glad to answer your questions and help. And they have just about everything known to man you can buy. And, you know, because I started living off-grid over 12 years ago, I was using lead-acid deep cycle batteries. Now they have silicon salt batteries out of China, which is 1.5 times the shelf life. It's good to at least minus 40 degrees below Fahrenheit. It's a no-maintenance battery because it's sealed. I would look into that. I would look into the new lithium-ion batteries. And there's a battery called Fisker battery out there. Now, I don't know. It's made for electric cars, which means it's in the context of a shallow cycle battery. So it gets 500 miles per charge. It can charge in less than 1 minute. This is information I've read, and I heard it could make Musk's thin film lithium batteries obsolete, and it's known as a solid state battery. Now, I don't know if they have a deep cycle type, if you will. I use that in quotes for off-grid living yet, but this battery I read about over a year ago, and it's something worth looking into. But I would look into all the above. Not that deep cycle batteries, lead-acid batteries, is hard. It just takes a little extra maintenance, which is literally an hour per month. Literally an hour per month. It's not a big deal at all. So if you have the ability to have some diligence in your projects for someone, you know, who has that, it won't even be a big deal at all, because I go into my batteries on a regular basis because I have other electronic tools with my solar array. It tells me how many days I've been uncharged, what my voltage is, what my amps are. You know, if I do something in the cabin, you know, something like a vacuum cleaner too long, or we have a little dog here. When we give him a bath, we have to use a hair dryer. You know, little things that take a lot of amps. You know, I'll go in and check to make sure where we're at. It's kind of like having money at the bank. If you don't have the money, you don't spend it. And making our electricity is very similar. If you don't have the electricity, you don't use it, because I really recommend not going below 80% of capacity on your lead-acid battery. Vince?
Yeah. You have a system similar in many respects to what we have. We don't have lead-acid batteries here for our off-grid, on-grid hybrid system. We have nickel-iron batteries. And, class, I haven't talked about nickel-iron batteries very much, and I'll tell you why. I've been waiting for the CIYI battery company in China to make good on its warranty. They have not. Bruce Kay and I split an order of 81 batteries, or 81 cells. Each cell is 1.2 volts, and they're the nickel-iron cells. And so he has 40 of them, and I have 41. I bought one extra small one. It's only 100 ampere hours, and I wanted to experiment with that. So I have 40 of the 500 amp cells, and so does Bruce Kay. And both of us are having problems with lazy cells and dead cells. And the CIYI battery company has been stringing us along, do this, do that, change the electrolyte, charge it with a charger that is absolutely not available. They've been recommending things to put us through the meat grinder, and I really dislike working with them. From my perspective, they're very hard to work with, and they use the language barrier to their advantage and to our disadvantage. And if I were them, I would say, Mr. Finelli, most so sorry you're having problems. May we send you 2 replacement cells? Would that be okay? Most so sorry for all the problems that you are having. Mr. K, most so sorry for all the problems you're having for years with yours going to 0 volts, being unable to charge it. Mine actually reverse voltage. I have a cell that literally went from plus to minus right in the middle of a string. It's not like I did anything. It just decided to reverse voltage. And that does happen. It's unusual, but it does happen. And it's manufacturing defects. So these guys, the CIYI battery company in China, I'd recommend you stay away from them. Seriously. Avoid the hassles that we've had. And they finally said to us, you know what? We can't help you. Yes, they can help us. They can send us 2 cells to Bruce and 2 cells to Vincent, and the problem would go away, but they won't do it. And how much are they talking about? I don't know, $800 total, but they won't do it. So I would suggest that Donald Trump ramp up, quadruple the import tariff on these batteries so that companies in the United States will make the original iron nickel battery, the kind that Thomas Edison, his company, came up with around the 1900s. We can make them here. We don't need the Chinese to not stand behind their warranties and to stiff us. So we could make them in the United States. Donald Trump, President Trump, please quadruple the tariff on imported from China nickel iron batteries so that we can make them in the United States. That's my recommendation to President Donald Trump. And I mean it. I mean it wholeheartedly. I don't want to see any more CIYI batteries come into the United States unless they decide to stand by their warranty, which they don't do.
Mm-hmm. Now,
so,
Vince, I got to jump in real quick here. Keep in mind, new technology is a double-edged sword. The powers that be don't want self-sufficiency. The media, the establishment, they protect the elite. They're owned by the elite. They fund everything. In other words, the minions, the goons at the mid-level are bought and paid for. They do not want you to think outside the box. They don't want you to think for yourself. So whenever you, whether it be a new car, whether it be a smart refrigerator, whether it be fancier batteries, you always have to look into the consequences of the customer service. First of all, the customer service in America is almost non-existent. You got to look into warranties. You got to look into how long the usage has been out there to really look at their track record. See, and a lot of people, they look at all the bells and whistles regarding the technology. Technology, so many people use terms like drudgery. Oh, I can't wait until I'll have a garden when I can have a robot to do the weeding and pick the vegetables for me. This is not drudgery, doing stuff like that. It's fun, it's exercise, and people are missing out on those skill sets. When you have a machine, a push button, doing everything for you, and then it breaks or there's consequences because of lack of warranty, then you're going to have issues. And because you can't work on it yourself, just like the new vehicles today, you're going to have issues, and you're going to have to spend through the nose in order to get things taken care of. Don't, America, and I know Europe and a lot of the world listens to this show, so in a lot of ways, third world countries are better off than we are. And it's not because of emerging markets, because they haven't really succeeded in that realm yet either. It's because of the fact that the people, the little people, have not given up those skill sets, have not thrown their 19th century skills out the window for this 21st century technology. It's up to you to do the homework. That's why I gave you Backwoods number. But I'll tell you, with what's coming with the economy and everything being false and phony and everything being manufactured and artificial, I really recommend to the people, especially if you're young, if you're a parent and grandparent, and you're sending your kids to college where 90% of the degrees are worthless, and they're paying a fortune for social indoctrination, I think it's stupid. Pardon my French, I think it's stupid. You really got, if If I cared about a young person today and I had the money, I would just buy a piece of land for them and have them live on the land. It's not that they couldn't work out of their home or find another job, but make their main job basically learning skill sets that have been forgotten on purpose, by design, by the elite, so the people can be controlled. There's no reason why 90% of Americans should live in urban, suburban America. There's no reason for that. We need to go back to the old ways, not in every way, like my solar way. You know, when I talk about being a mountain man, I say it tongue-in-cheek, because there's no such thing as a mountain man left in the lower 48, maybe a few up in northern Canada and Alaska. But I have an electronic solar array. That's not being a mountain man. So when I say mountain man wannabe, it's kind of a joke. But I didn't throw out a lot of those 19th century skills. I regained them. And it's a great, fun life. Vince?
We'll talk more about off-grid when we come back. Well, Rich, to recap, almost 2 hours of broadcast classroom today. No one challenged us on our commentary about the young people, many of the young people lacking the skills and practical knowledge that they will need to survive the coming days, years ahead. Kyle did call in, and he agreed with us that our position is correct. And no one challenged us about our searing commentary on the public training camp. What a cesspool it is. How the teachers are doing a miserable job. How the administration is askew. They've forgotten the mission is to educate the young people. They've forgotten that. And so I have an SOS that I'd like to put out there. So, class, I'm not opposed to moving. And if you've got a better location in mind that you think the Finelli family should move to, I'd love to hear about it. You can either call the broadcast anytime, any day, with any instructor. You can interrupt if you think that you've got a better location for us to relocate. I'd love to hear why. Or you can send me an email, instructor@usaprepares.com, usaprepares.com. But Scheben, we talked about what it's like to live off-grid. You will be in control of your own destiny. If you're lazy, you're going to be cold, and hungry, and thirsty, and dirty. Because it takes work. If you want water, and you have a water storage tank in your cabin, and you want water, well, you're going to have to go outside, start your generator. You're going to have to pull that starting rope, or you're going to have to make sure that the battery is charged enough to start your generator. You're going to have to make sure that you brought fuel to the generator. You're going to have to maintain the generator, change the oil, clean the air filter, all those things to make sure that you have your own water. If you want to be hot, you're going to have to find some kind of fuel, or if you want to use wood, you're going to have to get wood. And you're going to have to bring it inside, or do as we do, heat with an outdoor wood furnace. And it takes tons and tons and tons of wood to heat a house. If you think you can do it with a pickup truck load, forget it. I would say it would take us about 20 pickup truck loads if we only wanted to heat half of our house. And Rich Scheben said he put a thermal curtain across his cabin, divided it in two, was heating half of it. We did exactly the same thing. We're heating half of our house instead of all of it. And it's been warm, and we're still using an enormous amount of wood. So we're doing scaling back, just as you are, Rich Scheben. And I think this is the beginning. I think we're going to have to scale back another half going forward because it's getting harder. What do you think?
Oh, that's why I try to connect the dots with financial, economic, social, and political rationale so people can understand what's coming. Because if you don't understand, you don't read up on the research up, you don't get prepared. You know, it's a lot more than just wood and living off grid and having your own power source and raising animals. It's when you live this way, you do the reading and research that makes you evolve with more skill sets, more information. For example, how many people know what antioxidant cancer tumor fighters are? Immune system stimulants are built of blood purifications. How many of you know that the immune system who are on these pharmaceutical drugs deals with inflammation, allergies, infections, circulation, detoxification, cancers, and tumors? How many of you know that enzymes, if you cook your food over 130 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to kill the enzymes in your vegetables? How many people know that vitamins and minerals comes from the soil? Because America's soil is chemically and mechanically beat to smithereens. See, when you live this way, you learn, you read up, you research, and you have the opportunity to help others with information. Vince?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm looking at, some of the names for broadcasters, and I'll bet you none of the mainstream broadcasters know the kind of things that you know